Hi there guys, we're now going to take a look at really the hardest inequalities can go on C1. So we're asked to find the set of values of x for these three things. So the first one, the second one, and for part C is actually combining both A and B together, and that's where the complications start to arise. So hopefully A and B is pretty straightforward. Now finding the values of x, that means solve. Now here you can see it's a linear problem, so let's expand this really quickly. So 6x plus 3 is more than 5 take away 2x. Sorry about that. (2x). Okay, so the highest amount of x is on the left. In fact, I'm just going to solve this really quickly. So you should have 8x is more than 2 and x is more than a quarter. And there you have it. All the numbers, if they're more than a quarter, it meets this criteria. Now, the second one is a quadratic. I know that because of the 2 there. The 2 is the index. So that means I'm going to try and factorize this using my... I'm trying to solve it using my factorizing knowledge. So let's try 2 brackets. It should work for these questions. Obviously, completing the square is another way. Quadratic formula is another way, but these should work. Now, because it's a 2 here at the front, my only option is this. And once again, you can factorize this by, the first coefficient times 3, factors of 6, and going through the whole process. But if you can follow this, it's going to save yourself a lot of time, especially with an easy one like this. So I'll repeat what I said at the start. Because that's a 2, it has to be a 2 and a 1 because it's a prime number. Because this is a 3, my only options are 3 and 1 in the end parts, the outer parts of these brackets. And I've just got to think about which way around, and it has to be this way, and I'll explain why. Because this 2 obviously gets multiplied by this value here. So 2 times 3 is 6, and the 1, so 6x and 1x, I can make this negative 7x. Play around with it the other way around, you'll see it doesn't work. So they have to both be negative to make my minus 7x. Okay, so let's solve that. So x is equal to a half, and x is equal to 3. So this is where it starts to get interesting. But before I do that, what I'm going to do is always, when it's quadratic, it always helps to sketch the graph. So these are both on the positive side, so I'm going to... Oh, that's pretty bad, but it would do. Okay, so there's a quadratic curve. Let's put these numbers in. So there's a half, and there's 3. So if they ask you to shade on the graph, they don't actually do that in this question, but I'm going to show you that anyway. But basically, is it this area here we're going to shade in, or is it past these points, like here and here? So is it between these two x values, or is it on the other sides, basically? So to do this, what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to draw a number line. So at the moment we've got a half, so I'm essentially just redrawing this x-axis here. So we've got a half and 3. So we're just going to test numbers. So let's start with 0. It's always easiest to start with that one. So let's put 0 into the question. So 0 squared is 0, times 2 is 0. That's obviously going to be 0, and I get 3. So here, 3 is bigger than 0. So this criteria meets it. So it actually looks like we're going to be shading in this area and this area. Just to confirm it, if we put a 1 in here, so it's going to be 1 squared is 1, double that, 2. Take away 7, 7 ones are 7, so 2 take away 7 is minus 5. Add 3, minus 2. Minus 2 is not bigger than 0, so this area doesn't work. Let's try 4. 4 squared is 16. Double that, 32. Take away, that'd be 28, so that's 4. Plus 3 is 7. 7 is bigger than 0. So that works as well. So if I was shading, because I know it has to be more, it has to be in this direction, more than there, and it has to be in this direction, so it has to be less. So there you have your answer. But for both, it's slightly different. So let me redraw that number line. So I'm going to have to put this number on as well. So let's say that's a quarter there. Please remember this doesn't have to be to scale at all. It's just to help your understanding. So let's pop these ones on. So we know it's more than 3, and we know it's less than a half. And always draw your arrows all the way to the end of your line. You'll see why in a minute. So this one, the first one, it says it has to be more than a quarter. So there's a quarter, and it has to be more all the way to the end. And what you're looking for is this section of overlap. You can see here, there is a section of overlap if my highlighter was working. It's thinking about it. Here we go. Yeah. So in this section here, I can write this. I'll change it to orange. So my answer can be less than a half, but more than a quarter. That's a 4. There you go. And it's also, both of these, so it's also more than 3. Remember, it does say both, so you're looking for where the overlaps are. So I could have drawn my highlighter here as well. Okay, hopefully that makes sense. They're all like this. If they ask you to shade, just do the number line, test the 3 areas, and when you draw the arrows like this, it tells you what the inequalities should look like. So hopefully that made sense, and best of luck.